Less than 2 weeks until kickoff. Should you be excited about our Michigan State Spartans? Well, yeah, for some things, and then there's other things that you could be cautiously optimistic about. We'll talk about it.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by Fanduel. Now through September 22nd, all Fanduel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below on YouTube what you are most excited for this upcoming season, because that's what we'll bat first on today's show. Yes, we're going to get to our Michigan State Spaniard Spartans over there balling out in Spain, and then a few mailbag questions at the very end. But yes, football will reign supreme here to start this show. And it's actually from a mailbag question, a very good one we got before the weekend, because as we are less than 2 weeks away from kickoff, can you feel the excitement? Well, my goodness gracious, you probably very well could, but some people out there like Coach Chris are a little confused of what to actually be excited about. And yeah, it's a very legitimate question. So let's just get into it right now, because yes, we have been talking highly about a lot of things going on with Michigan State, but yet the over-under in Vegas or the S&P Plus or the K-Ford rankings, whether it's gambling, whether it's analytics, or whether it's just what the media is telling you, not really expecting a lot from Michigan State this season, right? Like the analytics in Vegas are saying 4 games, 5 games is what you're going to win. But hey, here is the Coach Chris email he writes in. I'm hearing good things about the D-line, hearing good things about the linebackers, hearing good things about the secondary, hearing good things about the quarterback, obviously, hearing great things about the tight ends, hearing good things about the receivers, hearing that the O-line is blocking as a unit for the first time in a while. And then the next moment, I'm hearing that our roster is below average. The two don't seem to line up. So should I be excited about the roster we have, or should I be frustrated that we don't have a roster that can compete and potentially win on Saturdays? Very, very good question, Coach Chris, because yes, it's been a confusing build up to the season. Optimism. Hey, this position group and this position group, and honestly, if you ask me, most position groups have upgraded from last year. But at the end of the day, this is where we'll start. My expectation and my prediction is a 7-5 season. So right off the bat, before we go any further, this is on you guys out there now. You have to decide if like a 7-5-ish record, take it one game each way, 6-6, 8-4. Does a 7-5 record excite you? First and foremost, that's a question you have to answer, because, well, sure, we get a lot of MSU fans that agree that, yes, 7-5 seems to be what they are expecting too. We get some MSU fans out there that actually, say that you're way too negative for even saying that. It should be way higher than that. And then, well, we get some MSU fans that say, and especially some rival fans too, that say even a 7-5 record is way too optimistic and way too, upbeat for us. And they hear 7-5 and for some reason think that we're predicting like a college football playoff berth. Like, no, we're just over on this end of the microphone, we're just trying to make it like a Jacksonville bowl game, some around Christmas, go to a bowl game for the first time in 3 years, guys. So look, is 6-6 or 7-5 on the surface exciting? No, of course not. However, is 6-6 or 7-5 in a rebuild, especially in year one of a rebuild, exciting? Well, I say yes, because, well, for a few reasons. We don't just do quick answers here on Locked On Spartans. The first one is point blank, just like we alluded to, whether it's the gambling line, whether it's the analytics line, whether it is just the general expectation of where Michigan State is right now, 7-5, something in that ballpark would be exceeding expectations, okay? Again, the over-under right now is 4.5. That's a good indicator of where Michigan State should be this season. If you go to a bowl game, that's ahead of schedule. As almost sad as it is to say just 6-6 or 7-5 is ahead of schedule, guys, fact of the matter, if you skipped out in the last 2 months of last year, first of all, I don't blame you. Second of all, you will understand that this is a big road ahead. But you guys already know that most likely, so enough about that. What else is there to be excited about with just a 7-5 record? You're doing that with a young quarterback at the helm, Aiden Childs, who we will get to here in a little bit. That's been the storyline of the season. At one time, ranked the number 1 quarterback transfer per 24/7 Sports, ended the offseason as the number 2 guy. All right, point blank, very talented kid, live arm, great legs. But it also means if you exceed expectations, well, that means you had young trench players that stepped up. And where do you win college football? It is in the trenches. So, yes, your starters right now for the defensive line, for example, Daquan Dowse, Maverick Hansen, 2 guys, 1 year of eligibility left. That's at the end of the road for them. But if MSU is going to be that good, that means you've also got production from Alex Van Sumeren, Ben Roberts, let's say Mike Schunbeeler, the true freshman who's catching a lot of waves so far this offseason. And you get my point. Same goes for the other side of the ball. That means the offensive line, who is a question mark going into this season, has exceeded expectations because of the young guys. We've talked about it up and down. The offensive line starters, that's a fine unit. Okay. The issue is there's not a lot of depth behind them. But let's say that unproven depth, guys like Cole Dellinger, Stanton Ramble, for example, Andrew Dennis, a true freshman, we'll throw his name out there. Why not? Gavin Brocious, for example. Let's say he does really well. These are all young guys that come in next season and beyond as solidified linemen. So that can be exciting. And also, guys, it means that what the staff did this offseason worked. All right, just for example, go look at the secondary. They upgraded that secondary. They identified pieces, whether it was right off the bat after someone leaves like a Jaden Mangum, or whether it was just identifying a need very early on. Okay, like that is what you see from that staff and adding players necessary in the portal. We've learned that that is a skill, okay? And they did it no nonsense. They had a very organized board, and they executed if you are going above expectations. So let's break it out here. Unit by unit, what can you be excited about? What can you cautiously be optimistic about? What is there still a question mark for? What you can be excited about, I got 3 groups right here. The linebackers. All right, even before the offseason, even before the portal, you still feel okay about linebackers. Cal Halliday's there. Pretty cool. Jordan Hall, true freshman, played 6 games, started 6 games last year. Really solid. Okay, good. You added Jordan Turner. You added Wayne Matthews, one of the best pass defending linebackers in FBS last year out of Old Dominion, okay? That's a unit you could be excited about because that was a strength of sorts going into the offseason. They bolstered it with some transfers coming into this year. The tight ends, just like Coach Chris says, Jack Velling. I will say it for the 79th time this offseason. This man, Jack Velling, caught more touchdowns as a tight end than anyone else in the nation last year. The way Jonathan Smith and Brian Lindgren run their offense, tight ends are the key. They got another great one, and this is a staff that develops the living hell out of tight ends, okay? Luke Musgrave didn't get drafted on accident. The guy whose name I can never remember, and I probably should start writing down in my notes that got drafted to the Texans the year before in the 5th round. His last name starts with a Q. My God, this is going to torture me. Anyway, he's not getting drafted all by accident. Jack Velling one day will get drafted. Tight ends are an emphasis of this offense and an emphasis of development for this staff. You can be excited about them. And receivers, too. Montorie Foster, he's back. Jerron Glover, a lot of promise. He's coming back. Nick Marsh, he's going to be special here one day. You can be excited about that. Now, before we get to cautious optimism, Aiden Childs has his own section because, yes, you should be excited about Aiden Childs right now, but with a tinge of caution, okay? And this is everything that Jonathan Smith is saying. This isn't just me trying to be an Eeyore ran in your parade, but he's still 18 years old as a true sophomore. He has played less than 100 snaps. He has thrown less than 40 passes in college. And yes, well, he is graded pretty good, according to the QBR of ESPN. Whether your own eyeballs, you don't even need an analytical stat for this one, whether your eyeballs see a throw from the 20-yard line to the 20-yard line, or the fact he's a dual-threat quarterback, whether you see that, he's still a young, raw prospect. So, yes, it is exciting that, well, we get a dual-threat quarterback here, a guy with a live arm, a guy that already knows the offensive system. That is sensational right off the top. Let's be a little patient here. I know we're going to have a hard time doing this right here on this show, but that's where it's in the middle of. You can be excited right off the bat and cautiously optimistic. And you know what? To keep it going with the cautiously optimism, we're going to keep it going in the next segment because, guys, right now I need to talk your ears off about FanDuel Sportsbook. Folks, you already know it. America's #1 sportsbook. They're going to take care of you this football season with all your wagers. If you have props that you want to play out there, whether you already want to get in on the lines, which, speaking of, right now, Michigan State Spartans, 11.5-point favorites over Florida Atlantic University. If you're liking that line right now, go over to fanduel.com and we'll go ahead and throw a few shekels on our Spartans. But hey, also this football season, they are doing something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. My goodness, get ready for the NFL season with that. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook, guys. Again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. And before getting back into the mix here, hey, college football is back, and the Locked On College Football Podcast kicks off the action with a live season preview at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, August 20th on the Locked On College 24/7 stream YouTube channel. This 4-part series covers each of the 4 major conferences with, of course, the Big Ten as well. Be sure to check out this special streaming on Locked On College's 24/7 YouTube channel or Amazon Fire TV, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You already know it. It's your team every. So where is the cautious optimism? Like, there's reason to believe that this could be a good unit. I just have to see it first. I have 2 in front of me. It's the defensive line. It's the secondary. Both are going to be married to each other, as we all know as Michigan State fans right now. This is a collective unit that has struggled the last few years. You already know the story. Secondary really struggled on paper. And just with the eye test, again, we've seen the games. I don't have to rehash this, but let's just do it anyway. They were like either last place or second to last place in just about every pass defense metric you can think of in the Big Ten the last few years. So we'll start with the defensive line. Why is there cautious optimism? Well, Daquan Dowse, we really like that transfer pickup from Georgia Tech. His biggest 3 games last year were against the biggest 3 opponents the Yellow Jackets face. It was Georgia, North Carolina, Ole Miss, his 3 most productive games. He showed up when the lights shined the brightest. Can you get that out of a full season from Daquan Dowse? Maverick Hansen, he's back for another year, but it's more so what we're hearing from fall camp, the guys behind them, guys like Alex Van Sumeren, guys like Ben Roberts, 2 guys, former 4-stars, amongst the best in the state when they left. Ben Roberts from Utah, not both from Michigan. Ben Roberts from Utah a few years ago, #1 recruit out of that state. And then Alex Van Sumeren, the #1 recruit in the class for Michigan State 2 years ago. They are catching a lot of people's eyeballs in fall camp. Now, the cautious optimism, we got to see it. Like, we actually have to see it. This isn't like an Aiden Childs thing where, okay, we've at least seen a few things on the field. Like, no, we are going to have to see it before we really throw a parade around the defensive line. And the secondary is going to go right in lockstep with that. Now, this is a unit that has raised their floor this offseason. We already feel pretty good about who we got in that room, guys, right? Like, names you know, Dylan Tatum, Malik Spencer, okay, Chance Rucker, the guy that played a lot as a true freshman last year, Chuck Brantley, a guy that started in the first scrimmage as a corner, but they also got Ed Woods out of Arizona State. If you have listened to the show, you already know the story, one of the best pass grading cornerbacks in the Pac-12, okay, Legend Cavazos, Nikai Martinez, a guy that started every game as a sophomore for Central Florida last year. Like, there is not just names, but there's experience. In the projected starting 5, it's around 120 combined games with those 5 guys. But again, we have to see it, and this is where the marriage of secondary and defensive line is just so important because last year, what was the stat? I think it was 18 sacks last year. That was middle of the road for the Big Ten. They also got 8 of them in the first 2 games against Richmond and Central Michigan. That means they got 10 the last 10 weeks of the season. I might be on or off by 1 sack there each way or another, but nevertheless, the pass rush lacked last year. Okay, you could have a really good secondary like Michigan State might this year. It doesn't matter if you're asking them to defend guys for 9 seconds. Not really. But, guys, this is the other thing, too. We're not even asking for great from the secondary. We're just asking for good. We're just asking, can you be a good enough secondary to get us a 7-5, at least over here? I think so. We just actually have to see it. Now, the ultimate wait-and-see unit, that's going to be the offensive line. Just like Coach Chris said in that first email, like, you're hearing things about the O-line blocking okay in camp. Like, yeah, and we've said this too, like the offensive line, the starters at least, isn't what you worried about from your starting 5 unit, right? Like the guys on the inside, hey, Luke Newman, Tanner Miller, 2 great transfers. Christian Phillips, Big Dooley, Ashton Lepo over at right tackle. Like those 4 guys pretty rock solid. Brandon Baldwin at left tackle. This is what I really want to wonder. It's been said that there is a not totally legitimate battle for the starting position, but it's at least on somewhat of people's radars now. That's between him and Stanton Ramel. Stanton Ramel, 4-star recruit out of high school. Missed the whole last season because I believe it was a torn ACL. Whatever it was a big leg injury that required surgery, and for him to miss the whole last year. So it's one of 2 things for that to even that be on the radar here of a battle going on this fall. It's either, okay, Stanton Ramel has had a insane recovery. He is doing so well as a true sophomore, even with no development in his freshman year. And sure, crazy things like that can happen in college. Or that, you know what, they're not really sold on the left tackle position right now. So with the combination of, you feel good about your starters for now. The backups are largely unknown because only Dallas Fincher has even played in college in the 2 deep. And tie that in with the left tackle battle. That is the ultimate wait and see there. I'm not ready to even throw like cautiously optimistic about them yet. Like, yes, they will be better than last year as a starting unit, I think. Is that really saying a lot, though? I'm no disrespect to any of the guys in the line last year. Wow, that really left a lot to be desired last year, I think is a fair way to put that. Let's move on to the basketball court, shall we? Again, thank you very much, Coach Chris. LockedOnSpartans@gmail.com if you ever have a question. Let's head over to the basketball court because, those Spaniard Spartans so far in their Spain trip, 2-0. Doing pretty well. They tuned up Valencia 105-59 today, and then before the weekend 94-87 over the Madrid Allstars. We'll start really quick on this game against Valencia Allstars right now, which I believe Valencia actually borrowed 2 players from the Madrid Allstars, so I don't know if there's enough people in the city of Valencia to even field a basketball team, but nevertheless, we have some takes about that game. I actually have a take about the gym really quick. Those are the world's softest rims. Wow. We have a rim at my parents' house that has been around for, upwards of 16 years that has gone through every thunderstorm, every jump shot, every hanging on the 8-foot rim possible. That rim seems stiff compared to the rims that they're playing at this facility over in Valencia. But nevertheless, you know what? Coen Carr, Frankie Fidler, they lit it up early on in the game, 10 points at the half when the game was still somewhat barely competitive. Coen Carr was the story of this game against Valencia, though. He ended with 20 points. Now, did any of them come on jump shots? I counted 1, and it was a banked-in jump shot from the free throw line. So if you're, hearing 20 points from Coen Carr and hearing that, oh, my goodness, that might be a sign he's having a jumper, I'd hold off on that. However, really strong game from him. Yes, 16 of those points I counted came on dunks, but he played a lot of that 4 position against Valencia. And this is something that we've been saying on here for a very long time. I don't know if it's a hot take or not. I found it was interesting that Izzo made it a point that he was going to play Coen Carr at the 4 and experiment with that before the trip. Meanwhile, over here at least, that's always seemed like the natural position for him. He doesn't necessarily have a great jump shot like you would want to out of a true wing player like a 3. His dribbling is but you know what? Get him in that Brandon Dawson role. A guy that could slash, a guy that can use his athleticism to crash the boards. I think the 4 is going to be a great home for him. So that looked pretty cozy for Coen Carr against Valencia. Again, 16 points off dunks, a lot of them in transition, so it didn't really come organically at the 4 position for most of those points, but nevertheless, that is where Coen Carr should be, right there at the 4. Now, we got to shout out Anthony, a.k.a. I don't know if I can say his name on Twitter because this is a family show, but Anthony, he knows who he is. I hope you guys know who he is. He's got a lot of followers on Twitter. Just type in MSU box score on Twitter, he will show up because this man, if you think you love Michigan State basketball at home, if you think you're involved in, what these players are doing on the court, this guy has hand tabulated box scores over there in his free time. So shout out Anthony over there. And so, on top of that, he actually got a guy over in Valencia, a guy that covers the teams over there, to reach out to him. Gerard Soleil is his name. I'm not entirely sure of that pronunciation, but nevertheless, he wrote this to our guy Anthony that was creating all the box scores. He said, quote, "I have been organizing games for college teams for more than 10 years. I've never watched this physicality and killer instinct. They wanted to destroy us after the Madrid game, and they got that." The Madrid game, they won. A tad underwhelming, I guess, but we're going to get to that here in a hot second. But first, you need to talk your ears off about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. We're talking superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you are looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or it's your hard-earned money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the huge wins. So what are you waiting for out there? Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. So before the weekend starts, Michigan State plays the Madrid Allstars, and sure, solid lead going into halftime. Saw it evaporate in the third quarter, and then, thanks to a really strong finish by Jeremy Fears, actually, closing on a 6-0 run, they get the 94-87 victory. Xavier Booker was the story of this game. Kind of a quiet game against Valencia, but Madrid, 19 points in the first half, splashing the three-pointer home. Now, Frankie Fidler also finished with 14 points. I think he's been a bright spot in both of these games so far. Like we said, 10 points in the first half against Valencia. He ended with 11. I didn't really play a whole ton in that second half, but Frankie Fidler, I know that there are people out there that have doubts whether he can translate to the Big Ten. We are not one of those people over here. I think it's going to work out just fine in East Lansing, proving that so far against the grown men of the Madrid Allstars and the Valencia Allstars. But if I could just throw out one more player before we get into a little bit of concerns in this trip, and I say that in all lowercase levels. I'm not actually losing sleep over this just yet, but one thing I do want to add is Jace Richardson's defense. Tom Izzo talked about it in that week before this Spain trip even started. He said that, hey, you know what? Jace Richardson, of course, son of Michigan State legend Jason Richardson, is a little further along his freshman year than Jason was in his freshman year, and defense was one of them. You watch him against the Madrid Allstars, he was in these guys' shorts. And by and large, the defense of the backcourt, not going to be an issue moving forward this upcoming year. And now we transition into what could be a concern here. And again, guys, we got some time before the season. Okay, we got some time before that game against Monmouth. That's right, a little bit on that later to kick off our season. But it's still a concern that lingers from last year and the year before that, and maybe even the year before that. And no, we're not even obviously talking about Jaden Akins. He went, 0 for 11 against Madrid? No, we're not going to overreact to that just yet. The guy's still getting used to a new role. Better to work out the kinks over there in Europe. But no, what we are going to talk about is the front court defense, because I am going to go back to that little media scrum that Izzo had the week before going to Spain. And he said, well, Simon Zapala is looking a lot better than we thought. And a few thoughts into your mind. I actually had this conversation with the wonderful gentleman over at the Can't Read, Can't Write podcast. And Kevin Grex said something along the lines of this, which just painted a beautiful picture of it. But this is one of two things over there. It's either Simon Zapala is a very good player, and the Lawnwood coach is an idiot for not starting him every single game, or behind door number two, Simon Zapala looks a lot better because this is your front court, and this front court really won't be known for their defense this year. And even Lawnwood's backup center from last year looks really good against your front court players. You can probably tell in my tone which way I'm leaning right now to what could be the correct answer there, but this is what we're going to keep an eye on, because against the Madrid Allstars, that was glaring. Again, not the defense as a whole. They even showed it against Valencia. Would they have 11 steals in the first half against Valencia? But nevertheless, the backcourt, the guard defense looked just fine against the Madrid Allstars too. So those guys down low that we've been worrying about the last few years, that we've kind of been asking you to get a real good upgrade in this offseason, that's what we're worried about here, because the Madrid Allstars made the money down low against our front court players. So, again, you hear that quote last week, hey, Longwood's backup center that we got in the transfer portal looks a lot better than we thought. Is that because he's going up against the guys that have been struggling on defense in the front court the last few years? Again, we're not going to, at least I'm not going to admit that we're panicked about this, but that's just something to keep an eye on there. Regardless, so far, successful trip for your Michigan State Spartans. That's just like one thing we're going to nitpick. Again, the Aikens game against Madrid, going for an offer. I'm not going to sound the alarm bells now. He does that against Kansas coming up in the Champions Classic. Whistle in a different tune, but allow the guy to get used to playing the two, being like the alpha of this offense before you sound every single alarm bell. So nevertheless, let's go into the mailbag to end this show, because Tony's second Hall of Fame plaque. Not sure how we got that name. I'm sure there's an explanation that's going right over my head, but nevertheless, he writes in, gameplay, calling, performance aside, what are you looking forward for? What are you looking for out of the coaching staff or players during the FAU game or the FAU game day activities that will make you say, great, blank feels normal again? Sorry, I know I stuttered and stammered over that one. Basically, he's saying, aside from what we see on the field, what we are going to be grading for, what is something else that can make us seem somewhat back to normal here? And this might sound so stupid off the top and just like bitter from the last staff, but I really do think there is something to this. I'm looking forward to not a bad thing, like not a 15-yard penalty or a turnover. I'm not looking forward to those. I'm looking forward to the reactions of those, because the last few years you saw a devastating unsportsmanlike conduct penalty or a holding penalty when you got a first down and the guy didn't even have to hold for you to pick up the first down, or a fumble on the first play of a must-score drive. What would always follow? Keep chopping. Keep chopping. Like, I know it sounds so stupid that I'm just ready to flip the page on that, but really, guys, it takes me back. That's right. We're going to do some Glory Days radio right now. It takes me back to when I was in high school playing football. And I use the term playing football very loosely here. They gave me a uniform and a helmet. I was not necessarily playing during these games for the most part, but our team had this weird thing that whenever something bad happened, everyone had to yell sudden change, sudden change. And it was supposed to be like this wake-up call that, hey, things have changed, we got to react. But what it oddly ballooned into is that when you started uttering sudden change, like that meant that, oh God, things are unraveling right now and it's about to get really bad. And what would happen is that bad things would snowball into one another. I kind of think that's what keep chopping has been for this team the last few years, because you would only pull that out when horrible things were happening, like an interception, like a back-breaking fumble, like the back-breaking penalty. So, like, no, I'm just excited for something bad to happen and just the coaching staff just to, like, not have a gimmick for it, or just to not have a bat signal out to the players and the rest of the staff and the fans that, like, hey, that was really bad. Guess what? It's about to get a lot worse, because that is what happened here at Michigan State whenever the keep chopping thing was rolled out. Things would not get better. They would not indeed keep chopping. They would keep tripping over their own shoelaces and stepping on every rake for the duration of that game. So, Tony's second Hall of Fame plaque, what am I looking forward to the most? Just normalcy. Just not doing quirks after bad things happen. Ugh. Anyway, I'm excited for the tailgating lots to be full to start the season, because us fans deserve that. Like, that was a weird season last year, guys. If you stuck around, you still went to every game, you still supported this team, good on you. You're a great Spartan. For those that said, you know what, I'm checking out of October, November, I got to say, can't blame you. Welcome back. This is a hard reset. Let's fill those lots. Let's fill those stadium bleachers. That is going to be something to look forward to, because yes, it's going to be a hard reset for the guys inside the locker room, but just the program as a whole, us fans included, I think that is going to be important. So thank you very much for that great mailbag question. Guys, we are going to be back this week as we ramp up for game day. Again, less than 2 weeks. But hey, until then, you know where to keep it tuned. Locked on Spartans, your team in green and white every single day. Have a great rest of your week. Love you all.